Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our program, New England Butterflies. My name is Helen Liu, and I'm the Programming and Partnerships Manager at Cary Library. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the Cary Library Foundation. Their support enables us to bring programs like today's event to you. This program is being recorded and will be posted to the library's YouTube channel. If you have any questions for Bill, please enter them into the Q&A, and Bill will answer them as best he can. And Bill has done quite a few programs for Cary Library, but if this is your first time, I'd like to introduce our guest. Bill Gette is the former sanctuary director at the Joppa Flats Education Center in Newburyport, Massachusetts. A skilled teacher and field trip leader, he has been leading domestic and international natural history expeditions since 1986. He has led very successful programs throughout the United States and to all 7 continents. Welcome back, Bill. So nice to see you again.
All right, Helen. Good afternoon, folks. I appreciate you joining us today. I'm speaking to you from Newburyport, which is my home. Every once in a while, my system becomes unstable. I do pay my bills every month, but for whatever reason, and I don't see it's unstable until a couple of seconds after. So Helen is monitoring that, and if I have to go back a slide or two because my screen freezes, well, that's just how it does. Okay, New England butterflies, and this afternoon we're going to be talking about 40 different species of butterflies. Now, some of those are really quite common and very well known, but there are a lot of them that are very easily overlooked, sometimes difficult to identify, but they deserve our attention too, and so we'll be talking about those. So many of these things, the life cycles, I think, are very interesting for butterflies. And we'll go through. So here are the references that I've been using, which work very effectively. You can go on the internet, www.butterfliesofmassachusetts.net, and there are information about the species that are in Massachusetts, which is really good. There's the Massachusetts Butterfly Club that has good publications, and you might consider looking into the Butterfly Club, maybe joining. I think it's $45 a year or something like that. The field guides that I really like to use is the Kaufman one. It's a field guide to the butterflies of North America. And the Peterson field guide. These are the eastern butterflies. Both of those are excellent. I just prefer the Kaufman because the range maps and the butterfly illustrations are on the same opposite pages, which is good. You might want to look into some articles. There's an interesting article, Nature, Ecology, and Evolution article. This is May 15, about the origin of butterflies. I think it's very interesting. And if you want a checklist of the butterflies, in other words, which ones are here in Massachusetts, it's been recently updated, 2024. It's the edition 2.6. And that, again, you can go online, the North American Butterfly Association, and you can print it off for free. So those are just some of the resources. The photographs in this presentation are mine, and the range maps I've taken from the Peterson field guides. They're I think they're illustrative. I think they work very well for what we're going to do. Now, there's some things before we get started into taking a look at the butterfly, I think there's some things that I think are interesting. First of all, the evolution of butterflies and moths. Now, butterflies and moths belong to the order Lepidoptera, meaning scaly wing. If you look at the butterflies or moths, they have little scales on them. The moths date from about 200 million years ago, and butterflies about 100 million years ago. And apparently the butterflies, best research indicates somewhere in Western North America or Central America. So they've been around. Moths have been around 200 million years, butterflies at least 100 million years ago. Now, butterflies, some of them are very, very colorful and things like that, but there's a lot of variation within the same species of butterfly. So within the same species, the size of the butterfly, the wing color patterns, and the wing textures of the individual butterflies can differ based on whether it's a male or a female in a lot of cases. What subspecies it is. In other words, populations maybe in Massachusetts of the same butterfly that are in Mississippi, they could look quite different. The age of the butterfly with wear over time they lose coloration, things of that. Brood dates. Okay, within the same species, a brood of butterflies in the early spring can look different from a brood of that same butterfly in the late summer. And of course, based on temperature and lighting conditions, that can all contribute to confusion. Another thing to think about is also the top surface versus the ventral surface, under part of the wings. Many butterflies, for example, the sulfurs, perch with their wings closed above their bodies, okay, like this. Okay, so when they come and they land on a flower or a leaf or something, it's very difficult to see the top surface of the wings. You basically are seeing only the undersurfaces of the wing. Basically, the only time you can see that top surface is when they're flying, or if they're basking. If it's been cold and they come out and they bask, they open up their wings in order to absorb more solar energy. But that's one thing. And okay, what are we dealing with here when we're talking about butterflies? Well, worldwide, there are about 17,500 species of butterflies. North America, 775. Texas, always big Texas, 450. In New England, 153 butterflies have been documented in our area. Massachusetts, 121. And Maine, I do a lot of butterfly work in Maine, 118. Now, these numbers that we have here include some that are rare or very rare. They may only come into Texas once or twice every 10 years or something like that. It also includes butterflies that either are extirpated, in other words, they're no longer in North America, but they're still around, maybe in Central America someplace, or those that are extinct, that are simply gone. We don't have anymore, okay? During my last presentation, one of the questions came up, well, how do you tell a moth from a butterfly? And so I added this, this slide today. Basically, we have the Polyphemus moth, which is a representative of some of the bigger moths. Notice the antennae are feather-like. Now, this happens to be a male, okay? They have the more feathery ones, but even the female feather antennae are feather-like. Okay? And then the butterflies, typically, like this great spangled fritillary, it's a club-like, okay, with a little ball. Sometimes it's almost round, but different shapes, but it's distinctly different. Another look at them, here's two more moths, and there are some moths that actually act like butterflies, okay? These are clearwing moths. So the hummingbird clearwing moth on the left and the snowberry clearwing on the right-hand side. Okay, they come and they actually approach flowers like a butterfly or like a hummingbird, okay? They come in. Notice again, the antennae, it's not really like feather-like, but it doesn't have that stick with a ball on the top of it as a butterfly would do. So hopefully that would be helpful. And a lot of folks think that that moths only fly at nighttime. That's not true, okay? Obviously, these are day-flying moths. And if you walk through grassy area, very often you'll scare up moths that will fly a little ways and go back down into the grass again, okay? Another thing to keep mimicry, okay? Now, butterfly identification can be confused simply by the fact that some species mimic the coloration and the color patterns of other species as protection from predators. And there are two types of mimicry. There is Batesian mimicry, where there's an edible species, in this case, the spice bush butterfly, apparently is good tasting to predators, and the pipevine on the right-hand side is not. It's mildly toxic. So over time, the spice bush butterfly has evolved to look similar to the toxic one. So the spice bush butterfly is getting some level of protection by looking like a toxic butterfly. The other type of mimicry is this one, Mullerian mimicry. This is where two or more species are all both toxic. For example, the viceroy on the left-hand side and the monarch. Now, this is a change. It was originally thought that viceroys mimic monarchs because viceroys are tasty and the monarchs are not. But science indicates that no, viceroys are as distasteful as the monarch. But by looking the same color, they reinforce to possible predators that these are distasteful and stay away from them. Now, there are lots and lots of technical terms for butterflies, but if you know these terms, you'll be in good shape, okay? So if we stop in the upper right-hand corner, that's the leading edge of the wing, that's called the costa, C-O-S-T-A. Then you have the head and the antennae, which I think everybody would recognize, the thorax and the abdomen, and then the hind wings and the forewings. So those are, if you're looking through your field guides, that will help you with most of, they'll talk about cells and other things of that nature, but if you're starting off, these are the ones that you really need to know. And then up close, here again on the right-hand side, notice the forewing. This is the great spangled fritillary, really quite common, stunning butterfly. And the hind wing, and the proboscis, think of it as a long tongue or drinking straw where it's going in to get the pollen and the nectar. And then the antennae. Okay. And the range maps, just so we're all together on the range map, happens to be orange sulfur. Again, this is from the Peterson Field Guide. And the red indicates residential range. In other words, they may not be flying all year round, but they're there. And then the blue area is where in the springtime, summertime, a lot of the butterflies from the south move back into our area to breed and then go back. Okay, so a lot of these butterflies are migrating. So this is a difficult group. These are the skippers. So in North America, the 280, 289 species of skippers in Massachusetts. And they're really variable. We have the Habermock skipper on the left-hand side. Notice that they have different names too. Horse's dusky wing and little grassy wing, but they're all in the family referred to as skippers. And we'll go through these relatively quickly. Most people don't see these or haven't taken the time to look at them, but I encourage you to do so. Well, the largest skipper that we have in our area is this one, the silver spotted skipper. And you can see, well, it's whether that's silver or white, that's the name. And notice the wingspan, it can be 2.5 inches. So, I mean, this is a relatively big skipper. And their host plant is locust trees, wisteria legumes, things of that nature. And you can see them in open forest areas, along roadsides. This happens to be along a forest road when I photographed this. And they also will come into gardens also. Okay. So we see them, they're around now. So the flight months, and again, these flight months are focused on Massachusetts. So it's mid-May through early October. So there's a range map, significant range for this butterfly. Okay, this is coming into a nectar plant. This is on purple top vervain or Verbena bonariensis coming in. And here it is on allium. And in the lower right-hand corner, you see I tell you where I took this photograph. This happens to be Bethel, Maine, and it was in August 13th. Okay. So another one of these is this horse's dusky wing. So it's almost 2 inches. So again, for a skipper, it's pretty large. Host plant, the caterpillars are on oaks, and the habitat open woodlands around oaks, swamp fields. Happened to photograph this in a garden, and they're not flying yet, but early July we'll start seeing these. And there's a range map. So we're really up in the northeasternmost part of its range. And I photographed this in West Newbury, Massachusetts, which is the next town from Newburyport, and that was in July. Okay. Now, Arctic's, or also known as checkered skipper, small, inch to 1.25 inches. Now, notice the antennae, the tip of one of the key characteristics of a skipper is at the end, the ball at the end of the antenna is not a ball, it's a hook. Okay, all of the skippers, all the members of this group have that characteristics of the antennae. This is a grass in grasses, typically purple reed grass, other grasses. Okay. But so you can find them along forest edges where there are grasses. You can find them in fields, and they're flying now into June, and then that's it. After June, typically we do not see them here in New England, in Massachusetts. Notice the range. This is more northerly rain. This is a photograph I took in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. That's the source of the Connecticut rivers, and so it's called the Connecticut Lakes region of New Hampshire. And notice the range is way up in north, up into northern Alberta and places of that nature. Yeah. Another one of these skippers. Some of them are really pretty nondescript, but wild indigo, that's one of the caterpillars, that's one of the host plants, and crown vetch. So they fly in April into early October, so for a long time period. And we're sort of in the northeast. If you walk out in disturbed areas along old railway cuts or power line cuts, you can very often find the wild indigo plant, which is the host plant for this caterpillar. Now, these are tiny little skippers, and so many of them. If you want to see these, and they're really beautiful, but they're tiny. Notice this one. The biggest ones are only 1.125 inches. So how I find these things, if I go through a grassy lawn that maybe has not been cut for a while, or field, they like to be in that grass. Okay, and one of the characteristics of this skipper, beside the colors, has a very short antennae compared to most of the other skippers. So late May, they're beginning to fly now, well into September, and they're in quite a range. No, you can see in this illustration how tiny those antennae are, which is, if you're seeing skippers, and anything that will help you with the identification process is good. I photographed this one on July 25th of last year. I think it's really cute. This is coming into a nectar plant. It's common self-heal, and it's coming in to get then. Notice the beautiful, at least to my orangey underparts, but notice the belly is white. So really handsome. Lineage skippers, so many of these skippers. Again, grasses. You want to see grasses, walk through a field, you'll find them for sure. July into October, the range map again. One that looks very, very similar. And in terms of identification, field guides work very, very well. If you have the app on your phone called Seek, S-E-E-K, it doesn't work very effectively in the field, but if you take a photograph of a butterfly, that app, Seek, S-E-E-K, is really helpful in helping with the identification of some of these things. So more grassy. So I'm advertising, if you want to see skippers, go walk through a grassy area where the grass is up, less than a foot. It really works very well. So mid-May through September. Excuse me. So this is on coneflower. Now, if you want to attract butterflies to your backyard or your garden, coneflower is a fabulous. Zinnia is another one. The Verbena bonariensis is another one. Mexican sunflower. Some of these, I understand, are not native to our area, but they are fabulous for butterflies. And if you're seeking butterflies, another really good place to go look for butterflies in community gardens, because very often people will be planting vegetables, but they'll also be planting zinnias and other flowers. So that's a good place to look. So these peck skippers, I think the color patterns of these things are really stunning. And again, for most people, really overlooked. Yeah. Glassy wing, this is another skipper. Okay, 1.5 inches. They like purple top grass, which is really a quite common grass type in our area. So meadow areas, okay. And it's a subtle point, but notice the antennae, the clubs, they call them, on the end of the antennae. Notice they're white, okay? This is the only one with the butterflies that I know. So there are little aids to identification like that. I don't expect you to remember, but just note there are really some good aids to identification that are helpful. Okay. Okay. This Havamak skipper, named after the chief of the indigenous tribe in this area. So, again, grasses. I have a place in West Newbury that extensive fields, and that's a really good place to go look for. skipper. And if you look at skipper, another thing to think about, notice the wings here, and I'll show you a comparison in a moment. These are really quite rounded. The wings that you see that are out flat, notice they're really quite rounded. I'll do a comparison here in a minute. Here's Zabulon skipper. So if you look back here, it looks very, very similar, but notice the shape of the wings. I'll give you a comparison here. Brushy fields, range map to it. And here's the female. We talked about at the very beginning about the costa, C-O-S-T-A, the leading edge of the forewing. And you can see it on this. Okay. And so here is the comparison between the Zabulon and the Hobbamock skipper, just so that some of these field marks that they use in your field guides. In the case of the Zabulon skipper, notice the wings are really quite pointed. And in the case of the Hobbamock skipper, they're much more rounded. Subtle field mark, but in both cases, I think the antenna, you can see those antenna clubs have a little hook on them. Okay. Notice the frosting on the underneath. This is the female. And she's again on this purple top vervain, which is excellent for butterflies. And here's the male and the female on the top with that silvery edging on the costa forewing, and the male in the back. Okay. And dun skipper, this is one of the most uncolorful ones. Okay. They like sedges, so around the edges of wet areas, sedge-like grasses and things of that nature, but not very colorful. Matter of fact, is all brown. Okay, again, coneflowers. So for a lot of folks, again, skippers can be difficult because they're small and entails walking through grasses. They do come to gardens and to flowers, but maybe not as often as some others. So the next group is the swallowtails. And I think this is the group that many people recognize. They have no difficulty with these. I think this, along with the monarch butterfly, are what people would really understand. So on the left-hand side, we have the eastern tiger swallowtail, and on the right hand, the spice bush swallowtail. So starting off here with the black swallowtail, this is a pretty big butterfly. I mean, the wingspan could be up to 4.5 inches across. They love parsley and carrot and wild carrot. You may know wild carrot as Queen Anne's lace. It's the same plant. Okay. They like dill. So if you have an herb garden and you have dill and you see a caterpillar on it, it's probably the caterpillar of this black swallowtail. I beseech you, do not destroy that caterpillar because it will turn into this really beautiful butterfly. Relatively common. I've already seen my first one flying this year. Okay. So quite a range here. The male coming in here. It's on zinnia. This I photographed in a community garden. One of the people in the community garden just loved growing zinnias, and so that was really great for the butterflies. You can really see the tails now on this one. It's on this case, it's on clover. So it was nectaring on the blossoms of clover. So again, walking through a field, you can almost all of our fields have either red clover or white clover. Okay. And here is that butterfly, again, on the dill. This is the caterpillar of the black swallowtail. And for comparison, notice in a lot of ways, the female on the left has a lot more coloration. She has a really beautiful blue. But notice the bands of yellow, much broader on the male. Now, unfortunately, they're basically the same size, but in terms of my illustration, the male looks much bigger. It's not. Okay. I've only seen one of these. This is a very rare occurrence in New England. This is the giant swallowtail. It's much more common in the southeastern part of the United States, as you see in this image. So we in Massachusetts are in the northeasternmost part of its range, and it's only here for short periods of time. If you notice, this is a big butterfly. If I go back to it, the wingspan is 6.25 inches. This is a big butterfly. Good name for giant. This is pretty tattered. Okay, this butterfly has been around for a long time. And so as the season goes on, a lot of these butterflies that are very colorful are not quite as colorful as they are earlier in the season, and they get pretty well torn up. They might lose their tails and things like that. But this was a nice find. I've only ever seen one in Massachusetts. Eastern tiger swallowtail, 6.5 inches of some of the bigger ones. Okay. They love yellow poplar, wild cherry, sweet bay, things of that nature. This happens to be on a zinnia again. It's really quite common in southern New England. And I've seen a number of these, whether it be out in Boylston, I saw some of these, and they're certainly around my area in Essex County. Yeah. Range map here. Oh, real, but this is nectaring on red clover, also called purple clover. It's a really stunning butterfly. Like a female. So here's the male. He's handsome, but she's absolutely stunning with all that blue. Okay. So just again, the comparison of the males and the females. Okay. So the Netherlands looks very similar to it. Okay, it's Canadian tiger swallowtail, but it's much smaller. I'll show you a comparison in a moment. This is a butterfly that's common if you go up to northern New Hampshire, northern Vermont, or northern Maine. Okay, um, so pretty common there. But notice the range map here. Okay, so we do get them in Massachusetts occasionally, but the range is really much further north. So if you want to see if you're up in, say, if you're up in northern Maine or northern New Hampshire, and you see a swallowtail, you should really be considering it may be a Canadian tiger swallowtail. And as many butterflies do, this is a whole group of maybe 20 some odd of these Canadian tiger swallow. They've come into a manure pile. And a good place to look for on hot day is to look if there's a farm, look at a manure pile, or if you're going down a country lane or a footpath and there's scat of animal droppings. Very often the butterflies will come in because for what's waste to one organism is a bounty to another, because there are minerals in here that these butterflies can benefit from. So that's one place to look. So in terms of the comparison between these two butterflies, again, if you see a tiger swallowtail in our area, if you're in Massachusetts, its vast majority of time is going to be the eastern tiger swallowtail. But you could get a Canadian tiger swallowtail, and Canadian tiger swallowtails become much more common. But notice the largest Canadian tiger swallowtail is 3.25 inches. Sorry, 3.125 inches compared to the eastern tiger swallow. Even the smallest eastern tiger swallow is bigger than the largest of the Canadian tiger swallows. So size is good. Spice bush, we talked briefly about this before. Early May, I haven't seen one yet in my area, but a large butterfly, almost 5 inches wingspan. And this is coming down on nectaring on phlox. I photographed this in August, end of August. Okay. Spice bush. This is the female. Now that is a stunning butterfly. Now, if you look at the soil, you can see it's sort of dark. It's damp. Okay, but here's another butterfly that was coming into getting some fluids from the. Now it's been raining up in my area, Newburyport. I'm going to be going out looking for butterflies this afternoon, and I'm definitely going to be looking along some country roads and lanes and footpaths for puddles, because they will be attracting butterflies. Okay. The next group are the whites and the sulfurs. Okay, so cabbage white on the left-hand side and the clouded sulfur on the right-hand side. Notice the plant. That is a burdock, common burdock. Again, this is another one of those plants that people just ignore. It's a weed and it's ugly and all that. But look at the blossom. To me, it looks like a fireworks going off. There's just so many wonderful surprises in nature. This is veined mustard white. Okay, this is uncommon. It's if you want to see it, you really should go up to northern New England. I photographed this thing on the Connecticut lakes, northern New Hampshire. Okay, it's uncommon. Notice the black veins and a little bit of grayish in the wings. So this is I photographed this in June, and the range is really quite a bit higher. Now this is one of the most common butterflies, and I think if you see a white butterfly flying by, 99 point whatever percent of the time, it's going to be this cabbage white. It likes the host plant is many types of mustard. We have lots of different both native and introduced mustard plants here in New England. But they like open, they go like weedy fields, gardens, power line cuts, roads, almost anywhere that is appropriate for a butterfly, they're there. Okay. And this is a butterfly that was introduced from Europe in the 18th century. So it's not native to here. But notice range. It's all over the eastern half of the United States, even beyond that. And it's all the way up there, even to Newfoundland. Okay. So this is coming to purple top again. This is a female. You can tell a male from a female. The female on that forewing, on each wing has two dots, black dots. The male only has one. Okay. Again, a common burdock, that beautiful blossom, you know. This is a female with her two black dots. Some of them are very white. Notice the hind wing, the undersurface of the hind wing is really quite yellow here, but many of them are just white. So there's a lot of variation. And here's a male and female. They're copulating. You know, they're going to make little caterpillars. Okay. The next one is clouded sulfur. This is a relatively common butterfly in our area, starting in April all the way through October. So if you're just starting out in butterflying, there are some butterflies that you won't see because their season already gone by. But there's so many of these things that are going to be going August, September, October, and you can really enjoy them outside. They like legumes, clovers, trefoils, things of that nature. They really like them. And I was talking about butterflies, how it's difficult sometimes to see the dorsal surface of the wings, because when they come to rest, this is what they do. They put their wings above their bodies. A key field mark. Notice there are two silver circles, like the Earth and the Moon, okay, on the hind wing. You'll see one in a moment that is different from that. Really common in our area. Again, on coneflower, you can see those again distinctly one, they call silver spots. Okay. They're sort of silvery. One is large and the other one is smaller, but still distinctly silver. And I've tried to get this is clouded sulfur, the surface tops are, and this is not a very good photograph, but that's the only one I could take of where you can actually see the dorsal surface of the butterfly. Okay, the one that looks very similar to it is this one. These are flying around our area now, again, up in Newburyport, West Newbury, places of that nature, Essex County. Notice it has that big silvery spot on the hind wing, and it has a little dot, but not the second smaller silvery spot that you saw in the clouded sulfur. April through October. Okay, this is come on bee balm. Bee balm is another one of these really wonderful plants for your backyard pollinator garden. Hummingbirds love to come to it. So notice the range map. The permanent range of this is sort of through the middle part of the United States. And each summer, they recolonize the areas in blue. Okay. Again, that big silvery spot on the hind wing and just a tiny dot, but not another spot. And there is the comparison I'm trying to make. Okay, now we're getting into the coppers, the hair streaks, and the blues. These are all small. There are 138 of them. Okay, and the copper on the American copper and the Spring Azure. This is and by the way, I'm presenting these within each group in taxonomic order. Okay, so an inch and basically largest one, an inch and a half. So Some of these butterflies are really patient, and you can, if you just have your phone, you can get an image of it. But I use a larger camera that works really well. So it's a common one. Old fields and pastures. I photographed this along a wooded, grassy country lane. Notice the two really separated populations. The one that's in the northeastern part of the United States, and then a completely different set way up in Baffin Island in the area Nunavut of northern Canada. Okay. Really handsome butterfly, even to the antennae being black and white. Now, if you have pine trees, this is a butterfly that is going to be pretty well gone very soon. Its flight months are mid-April, so relatively early, into about middle of June, and then you don't see them any. It's associated with pine trees, and I photographed this along a cart path roadway underneath white pines, and that was where I found this one. So associated with pines, and there is wherever you see pines. Notice the lines on the hind wing, the white, but notice also with black. This is one of our really early hair streaks. This one, this is late April all the way through October. But notice the characteristic of the hair streaks. And by the way, some hair streaks don't have this characteristic, but most of them do. If you look to the right hand, the rear end, the right of the butterfly, it has those two tails, if you wish. And that sort of orange and the black, I guess, is supposed to look like an eye. And those little tails look like antennae. And the idea is that in theory, it's supposed to provide some level of protection from predators because they don't know which, if they are focused on the rear end of the butterfly and the butterfly flies away, they'll be going after the wrong part of the butterfly. Okay. A really handsome gray hair streak. Eastern-tailed blue, late April. Okay, so they're all the way through the October. Again, notice that it's a tailed blue, and you can see its little tail. And again, maybe confuse a predator by having that orange and black, what looks like eyes back there. Photograph this along a country lane, a grassy country lane. So these are good places to look for them. They will come into some flowers, wide ranging. And Eastern tail blue, this is the dorsal, the top surface. Occasionally they cooperate and actually will show the dorsal side. This is the male and there's the female. Okay. Spring Azure, this is the second butterfly that I see in the spring. Okay. And almost all the time it lands with its wings above its body like this. So this is the Atlantic Spring Azure. There are 4 different subspecies that are recognized. The one that we have is this one. So this is referred to as the Atlantic Spring Azure. And later in the summer, you get this one. Notice the scientific name at the end. The subspecies name is neglecta, like overlooked. And that's exactly what this subspecies was. People didn't, the scientists, Lepidopterist, didn't recognize this as a subspecies until really quite recently. Okay, then we have our brush-footed or four-footed butterflies. Butterflies have 6 legs, but some of them, in the case of these, the brush-footed or four-footed butterflies, the forelimbs, the front pair of legs are so reduced that you don't see them, okay? And so we have fritillaries and the wood nymphs, and this is one of my favorite butterflies, great spangled fritillary. Just really beautiful open fields, pastures. They very often come into gardens. This happens to be a Mexican sunflower, wide ranging. Coming in again on zinnias. just those silver spots on the undersurface of wings are just glorious. And this is what the dorsal side looks like. This is coming into red, or some people call it purple clover. I took this photograph. This was up in Bethel, Maine, and I was walking through a spectacular butterfly garden up there, the Valentine Garden. This is Mahoosic Land Trust, and it started to rain. And so I was watching these butterflies, and this is one that's sheltering underneath the petals of a cutleaf coneflower to protect itself from the rain. Okay? So if you wonder where do butterflies go when it rains, well, this is one answer. Okay. Now, pearl crescent, this is a very common butterfly in our area. Um, there's variation in the color patterns, but this is if you walk through a grassy area or something like that, you're probably going to see one of these pearl crescents. This is the male. This is a male and female copulating, making new caterpillars. Okay. And this was, as I watched it, this was a pearl crescent, was grabbed by this great pond hawk, dragonfly, and was consumed in front of my very eyes. Yeah. A comma, okay. Seasonal variations from end of May into October, quite a range. And you wonder, well, where does it get the name comma? Where does comma come from? Well, right there. That little spot, commas have this little silver-like, appears to be a comma. And coming into flocks. Now, the earliest butterfly that I see every year is this one in New England, is the mourning cloak. Note M-O-U-R, like a cloak that you'd wear to a funeral or something of that nature. Willow, host plant willow and birch and cottonwoods, elm trees. This is, for us, this is the longest living of our butterflies. It lives for 10 to 11 months. So it overwinters as an adult. So in the late fall, it will climb up underneath loose bark or something like that. And so when you have sometimes, a really warm day in early March, you'll see them flying around. It's a joy to see these things in the early time. This is the undersurface. Okay, then some of the ladies. These are really beautiful. They overwinter in the southeastern United States, and we migrate back into our area, recolonize our areas. So notice they year-round in the southern part, and they come all the way back all the way into New England, all the way to Newfoundland. So these, talk about butterflies, a tiny little insect is really moving around. So American lady, I love the undersurface of it looks like spider webs or something. It's just really beautiful. Yeah. American lady. And then there's painted lady, which looks quite similar on the dorsal side. We get these early April through October. Host plants, a lot of different plants that support them. So they move back into our area. Painted lady. Look at the undersurface. It has those 4 spots on the dorsal side of the hind wing. The lowest one is black on the center, and then red, and then yellow, and then black. And then you have these 2 amazing, like, blue eyes. So if you see one of these and you're not sure which lady it is, well, the things to look for, does it have 4 eyes or does it have 2 eyes on the underside? That's a good characteristic. Or on the dorsal side, the painted lady just has more of those white spots at the margins of the forewing. Okay. Red Admiral, up to 3 inches. The nettles, false nettles, things of that nature. This happens to be a photograph I took up in Maine. So early April, some cases. I haven't seen one yet in my area, but this is on sedum. Okay. And I just put a comparison of this red admiral with the American lady. Superficially, they can look the same, but just be aware that both the American lady, the lady has big eye patches. Okay. And I was just so pleased to find this. This is a common buckeye. So it's a year-round resident in the United States and recolonizes our areas. So if you have snapdragons or toad flax or false foxglove, that's the host plant for this. Handsome butterfly. Okay, then this is really complicated. This is red-spotted admiral group. Okay. The butterfly that you see on the left and the butterfly that you see on the right are the same species. Okay, explain. So the white admiral subspecies, this is the one that we see in northern New England. Okay? There are two very different subspecies. This is one of them. So the white admiral in the northern part of the range, and I'll show you in a moment the red spotted purple in the southern part of the range. And then where the ranges overlap, they hybridize. So this is what the range map looks like. So the white admiral in the northern part of the range in blue, the red spotted purple, same species in the southern part of the range. And notice where the hatch lines are. That's where you get intergrades, where you get hybrids. So this is the white admiral. I'll show you a comparison later on. This is Bethel, Maine. And this is the red spotted purple. Okay. So in terms of the comparison here, there's the white admiral on the left-hand side and the red spotted purple on the right. Same species. This throws a lot of people. And on the undersurface, the ventral side, notice the white admiral, the big white line versus the red spotted purple. And when the ranges overlap with each other, you get these intergrades, and they can look like this or slightly different than this. So just be aware that in some species of butterflies, over their ranges, they can really look quite different. Okay, a brown. Okay. Took us to the grassland. I think you get a pretty good look at notice it only appears as if it has four legs, but right above, in front of the four legs that you see, that has tiny little legs. Common ringlet, common in grassy areas. I mean, I walked through a field the other day and I found 12 of them. But as we go through the slides, notice how the coloration of these, they're really quite variable across the range or even within the same field. There's the range map. It's a much more common butterfly north and west of us. Just the coloration between the two of them here. Both of them right here in Massachusetts. Common wood nymph. Some years these are abundant. There were a couple of years ago, if you went out into the salt marshes, you'd see dozens upon dozens of them. Okay. They like milkweed, oak, just like monarch butterflies do. Old fields, bogs, meadows, salt marshes. Wide range. This one on Joe Pye weed. Joe Pye weed is another, there's several different species of Joe Pye weed, but this is another one that's really good for attracting butterflies and dragonflies and things of that nature. We're coming to the last two here. One is Viceroy. This is the host plant are willows and poplars, things like that. And it has this very similar coloration to the monarch butterfly as joint protection from predators. So mid-May, I haven't seen one yet, but I'm sure they'll be coming very soon, all the way into mid-October. So I photographed this one in July 28th, coming into a cone flower again. And on Joe Pye weed. Joe Pye weed is a shrub that grows up almost, well, certainly 5 feet tall, has all these reddish blossoms and really good for pollinating insects. So a comparison between the Viceroy and the Monarch, you have on the left-hand side, notice the size comparison here too. First of all, I point the arrow on the Viceroy, that black line, the Monarch doesn't have it. If you look at the Monarch on the right-hand side where my white arrow is, look just to the right of it. There's that dot. That is a scent gland that the males have. That is a male monarch butterfly, and that scent gland is used to attract females. But just in terms of the wingspan, okay, the Viceroy is significantly smaller than is the Monarch. So, and then the Monarch butterfly, I think this is one of the most commonly known butterflies, and people worry about monarch butterflies because at certain years the populations have decreased significantly. All of the monarch butterflies in North America migrate out of, well, almost all of them migrate out. Certainly all of the ones in New England migrate to Mexico. There is a year-round population, small year-round population in Florida, but the vast majority are moving out of our area. And so this is blue. This is the range during the summertime. We don't have them here during the winter. Okay. Here it is on the Mexican sunflower. There's the male again, the scent patches. And the female, she doesn't have those patches. This is the one that I photographed in Naples, Florida. Again, this is the non-migratory monarch butterflies. Okay. So monarch butterflies start off on egg, typically on the undersurface. I've turned the leaf over so I can photograph it. And then there's the monarch larva and the pupa, one of the most beautiful things in all of nature. And here is a monarch butterfly that's coming out of the chrysalis. And it takes them a couple hours when they come out of the chrysalis to pump fluids into veins of their wings in order to unfold their wings. And then they solidify and the wings are then rigid. And for me, nature is full of miracles. Everywhere I look, I see miracles. Well, so if you are a butterfly of New England, and that's a blue line, in September and October, especially along the coast, you can see hundreds of monarch butterflies migrating. And they're all migrating down to an area near Mexico City. So all the butterflies, monarchs except those permanent residents in South Florida, all migrate into Mexico. Now, after that, they may migrate partway into some place in Texas, and they have a brood. And then they fly maybe to Missouri, and they have another brood. And then those new butterflies migrate up into, say, Ohio, and they have another brood, and they return. So one butterfly migrates from New England down to Mexico, but it takes 4 different butterflies to get back, 4 different broods to get back. So think about data storage for a moment. Think that the butterfly that's migrating in the fall out of New England is migrating to Mexico. It's carrying genetic information that's not going to be used for at least 3 generations, because those butterflies that are making their way back to New England are never going to migrate to Mexico City. They're just going to be migrating back towards New England. So to me, it's one of those just extraordinary things. Well, now, if you can have a pollinator garden, something that looks like this, that's a good thing. A backyard can be a sanctuary. It doesn't have to be huge. A couple of flower pots with the appropriate flowers can be a source of nectar for butterflies. And if you have an herb garden, if you have some dill in there and you're patient with the caterpillars, let them survive, that's a good thing. So just a little quiz to go through here. And so we have 6 different butterflies and just the answers. So up in the upper left, that's the white admiral, the orange sulfur, eastern tiger swallowtail, the silver-spotted skipper, red admiral, and great spangled fritillary. So I hope during this presentation, if you're not particularly familiar with butterflies, but think, oh, this would be a nice thing, I hope I've given you encouragement, understanding that if you go out into the field, some of these butterflies you won't be seeing because they're not flying anymore. But the vast majority of our species of butterflies are yet to come. And I hope with some of the aids to identification, some of the things we've discussed, you'll feel more confident about going out into the field and enjoying these incredible organisms. And again, if you can have a flower pot with some flowers in it, if you can protect the caterpillars, that would be a really good thing. Okay, Helen, at this point, I don't know, are there any questions?
Sure. So Deborah wants to know, all the butterflies are on flowers. Did you take the photo with the flowers and then edit the photo to the butterfly photo? Or were the butterflies all taken on the flowers in all the photos?
Oh, no, no, no. Oh, yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. All of the butterflies are on the plants. I photographed them on their plants because I think it's really important is to either show the host plant or the plants that the flowers that these butterflies are nectaring on. So, for example, the red allium, the white admiral is on the plant that I photographed it on, and say all of those are on the plant that they were on when I photographed them.
Thank you, Bill. Does anyone have any last minute questions they want to ask? We thank you again, Bill, for sharing your beautiful photos and sharing all of that wonderful information, lots of wonderful comments.
Well, thank you everybody for viewing, and Helen, it's always a real pleasure to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.